All right, let's take a look at your essay. The first thing I'm going to do, mm, I've been putting these into double space format so it's easier, but to be honest with you, Brady, your essay is very, very short, so I'm not going to do that. But I want to talk to you about this format, excuse me, because you're not exactly following this, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. I mean, you kind of are, but I just want to go over it because you have some stuff in paragraph 2 that needs to be in 1 and whatever. So your first paragraph, your introduction, you need a hook. You need to build background information on mercy killing that connects the hook to your thesis. And your thesis has to be in the introduction. There is no other way to put your thesis. It has to be in your intro. The only way it will not ever show up in your first paragraph is if you are writing a very extended essay that's honestly maybe minimum 15 pages, because most of the time introductions aren't super long. They are usually one paragraph until you get into the realm of much longer papers. So you need a lengthier introduction. And then when you get to your first two body paragraphs, you need to make sure you have a topic sentence that encapsulates what will be in that paragraph that goes back to your claim, as well as using evidence in those paragraphs of specific examples from the text with some added analysis. So the analysis and topic sentence are going to tie back into whatever thesis you're making about mercy killing being ethical. And then when you get to your fourth paragraph, your third body paragraph, you will address the opposing side, and then you're going to use some evidence with them and some analysis, and then put evidence of your claim that demonstrates why this that you have already mentioned is wrong. Then your conclusion will restate your thesis, last words you want to give, and basically a summary, more than last words, summary of what you have written in the essay. And then something to leave the reader with that's similar with a hook. So if we look at your essay right here, you have 3 sentences for your introduction, and you don't really have a hook, and you don't have a thesis in this intro. Killing someone who no longer can or wants to be alive. This is an incomplete sentence. Killing someone who no longer can or wants to be alive. This is, so for a complete sentence, you need a subject and predicate. This is just the predicate. We know that predicates are there with a verb, so, and that sometimes killing can act as a noun because mercy killing is a noun, but this is an incomplete sentence right here. I'm not really sure what you're saying. Killing someone who no longer can or wants to be alive. Is mercy killing the right thing to do? I understand how this flows, but this is just not correct. The way for this to make more sense if you said mercy killing. Hold on, give me a second to think about it. I'm going to pause my recording. Alright, so the best way I can explain this after thinking about it is, when you have something like this, if you put before the verb, which is what I think you're trying to do, because that's how it looks like it's functioning, who or what is doing the killing of someone who no longer can or wants to be alive. If you place who or what is doing this action, that will, and you don't have an answer, that is telling you it's not a correct sentence. So is mercy killing the right thing to do? You don't really have a thesis here. And then right here, when you say the texts are time Kevorkian of mice and men, when you have a series of a list for commas, your third one you need to say A, B, and C, because otherwise this does not work with the commas. And you don't really need to mention the articles just like this. I know some people will say the text that will be referenced are this, this, and this, but the text you're referencing is not time. There's an article named to it. It's not Kevorkian because there's more to the title. And then a vice man is the only one that's correct, but it's also not italicized, so there's some grammar concerns there. So, don't really have an intro, you don't have a thesis, you don't really have a hook, you don't have much going on here that sets up what mercy killing is, and etc., etc. So here, as we move on to your next body paragraph, you kind of have a thesis here. It's just misplaced. And then you go on to explain what the first reason is, being if a family member is deathly sick and wants to die, there should be a choice to die. I mean, yes, that is the position you're taking. It's ethical. I don't know, because someone wants to die makes it ethical. And I especially say that because there is so much more in the article that will give you more ways to rephrase this or use specific evidence. And then, as you say here, today vast people are alive who would rather be dead, who have lives not living. So there's a few things going on here. Today, you should say something like, there are a vast amount of people who are alive. You know what? I'm not even going to go over this. You are missing a lot of words here. So let me just read that out loud again. Today, vast people are alive who would rather be dead, who have lives not living. This part doesn't quite make sense, and I think what happens with it is you're just missing words, and that's throwing your writing off because it's kind of out of context. And then you say that she had multiple choice, and here's another example. A woman's spinal cord was gradually collapsing. Her husband would not allow her to continue life as a suffering animal. So this is true. So you have these pieces of evidence, but you're also not being very specific with it. You're kind of very vague with it. Well, this one woman had this, and this person feels this way. And the articles specifically give you information for who they are. So the difference of this is you do want to introduce who they are to a certain extent. So mention that this is Roswell Gilbert. However, you do not necessarily need to be like, they live in Fort Lauderdale, this is where it happened. Because the key thing there is that he killed his wife so that she's not continuing life as a suffering animal. But if you look at this, deathly sick, so this does tie in. You could definitely use more analysis here. And you need specific examples. That is what we are missing from you. And then you move on to the next paragraph. And well, actually, before we do that, the quotes need to be attached to the words. So this actually needs to be backspace, and then you need to backspace the quote into here. And then here, you have another example. But we have a problem with punctuation and spacing here. He thought she was not living. Actually, no, you don't need punctuation or a space because this doesn't make sense. He thought that she was not living the life, so this is just random. It looks like the life she was meant to live. It was the right choice because he did not want her to suffer. So again, we have a little bit of analysis here, but if you look at this, this is 3 sentences with one specific example. So think about how you can tie this back in. So you talk about they should have a choice, but then you're just continuing on the same conversation of they shouldn't have to suffer. So really when it comes down to it, your evidence is one note where they shouldn't have to suffer, and then use examples. You use examples with minimum analysis, so that is something to consider. And then as we get here to your opposing paragraph, people are not in the right state of mind to make decisions about their life. I'm not thrilled with your topic sentence. There's also an opposing point. I think there are better ways you can address it, even, and at the very basis of it, you can say, while mercy killing is ethical due to point A and point B, there is another side that does not look at it in the same way. I don't know, something more, a little bit more than there's also an opposing point. And then you explain it because people are not in the right state of mind to make a decision about their life. Okay, explain what that means a little bit, because the biggest thing here is, in the second paragraph, you started to use a little bit more of a specific example, where you explain the death a little bit more. But then here, I can think of all the quotes and examples from the story that were in here to tell you this, but it's not there. And then you just say it's ethical. The reason it is ethical is that if they want to not live, that sounds weird. If they do not want to live any longer, when you have not after want, it's a little bit weird. They are thinking reasonably, I think you mean, which would need a why, about how they do not want to suffer. So this is very short again. If we look into your conclusion, the restatement of the thesis is good, which is misplaced. But this is the part right here. Helps the family suffer less. You did not touch on this at all, other than they didn't want to see their family suffering. And you say people who are alive, who want to be dead, should be able to pick ways of death. Mercy killing is ethical because if they do not deserve to live due to illness, then kill them. So this is a little bit of a wonky sentence, because if they do not deserve to live, this is marking a whole other territory, because you haven't worded it like this before. So then the way that this reads to the reader is that, well, if you say that people who are suffering should have the right, then you're saying people who are suffering don't deserve to live at all. And that may not be the choice they want to make. They do not deserve to live due to illness, and this is the wrong than, so you have a homophone issue here. So I'm seeing some spacing concerns with, oh, even here you have the wrong woman. This is plural. A woman's, a, and then woman with an E is plural. You have some random spacing concerns I've seen. I have seen homophone issues, comma issues, some formatting issues I am noticing. You don't really have a whole lot of transitions between your paragraphs. Your conclusion is okay, but I think overall what your essay needs is, if we're being really honest, this is really, really short for an essay, and it's definitely not a lot. If I look at your word count, 290, probably not the greatest, and I'm not looking at word count, but sometimes those real lower numbers are indicative of not a whole lot going on. So overall, as you move forward, aside from the things I talked about, you need to use your more specific examples in places where you've omitted people's names, and you need those specific examples, and then you need analysis that goes back to the ethical component of mercy killing. You need to make sure you are addressing it back to that every time.